Pause for a second and watch this. One card, 0 extra divs, and yet it still gives you a glowing border, a soft neon halo, a pulsing live dot, an expanding underline, glowing tag bullets, and a premium button shimmer. All of that is coming from CSS Pseudo Elements. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build it, step by step. So by the end of this CSS Pseudo Elements tutorial, you'll know how to use before and after like a real front-end developer, not just copy them from random snippets online. Now, here's the real problem. A lot of developers see a nice UI like this and immediately start adding empty divs everywhere. One div for the glow, one for the dot, one for the underline, one for the shimmer, and suddenly the HTML looks like it survived a small explosion. That's what people mean when they talk about DOM pollution. Your markup gets bloated with elements that don't actually add meaning to the page. And once your HTML gets messy, maintenance gets harder, layout bugs get sneakier, and the whole component becomes harder to scale. So today, we're going to clean that up. We're building a modern SaaS-style job card UI from scratch, and we'll use CSS Pseudo Elements to create every decorative effect without cluttering the markup. I'll show you what each piece does, why it works, and how to use the same technique in your own front-end web development projects. Also, if layout still feels like the part that slows you down, I put together a full guide called Build Any Responsive Layout with CSS Grid and Flexbox. It's a great companion to this tutorial because once your layout foundation is solid, effects like these become much easier to build. Before we start writing CSS, let's make sure the mental model is clear because this trips up almost every beginner, myself included back in the day. Before does not mean add something before the opening tag, and after doesn't mean add something after the closing tag. If it did, they'd be outside your element, which wouldn't make much sense. What actually happens is this. Think of before and after as two invisible little helper elements, kind of like spans that the browser quietly generates inside your container for you. Before shows up as the very first child, right at the start, and after shows up as the very last child, right at the end. Picture it like this. They're not in your HTML file. You'll never see them if you view source the page, but the browser renders them as if they were real elements sandwiched inside your container, kind of like a ghost that only shows up when CSS calls it. There are 4 rules you should remember. Rule 1. Content is not optional. This is the one that gets everyone. You can write the most beautiful CSS in the world, but if you forget content equals empty quotes, the browser just won't render anything. No error, no warning, it just silently does nothing. So if your pseudo element is invisible and you can't figure out why, check this first, every single time. Rule 2. They're inline by default. Out of the box, before and after behave like inline elements, meaning width and height just get ignored. If you want to actually size them, you need display block, display inline block, or you pull them out of the normal flow entirely with position absolute. Rule 3. The anchor principle. If you want to place a pseudo element in a specific spot, say pinned to a corner, you set the parent element to position relative and the pseudo element to position absolute. The parent becomes the anchor point everything else is measured from. You'll see this pattern in basically every component we build today. Rule 4. Self-closing tags can't host them. Elements like image, input, HR, and BR don't have an inside. There's no content slot for a pseudo element to live in. So don't waste time trying to add before to an image tag. It just won't work. Okay, theory's done. Let's actually build something. Step 1. The masked gradient border and ambient glow. First up, the card container itself. We want 2 things. a crisp, thin gradient border, and a soft glow that blooms behind the card when you hover it. Let's slow down on the parts that look intimidating because they're actually simpler than they look. Potting 2px on before, that's literally deciding how thick your border is. 2 pixels of padding equals a 2-pixel border. That's it. Mask composite exclude is the clever part. It takes 2 shapes, the full box and a slightly smaller inner box, and says, show me only the part where these don't overlap. And pointer events.none don't skip this one, since before is now sitting on top of everything with z-index3. Without this line, it would actually block your mouse clicks from reaching the buttons underneath it. This one line quietly saves you from a very confusing "why isn't my button clickable" ugh later. Here's a mistake I made constantly when I was learning this. I'd try to stretch before out behind the card using z-index -1, expecting it to peek out from the edges like a glow. But because our card has a solid white background, that pseudo element just disappears completely behind it. Negative z-index basically buries it in a hole it can never climb out of. So instead, we're going to do what production code bases actually do. Place before on top of the card with z-index3, add pointer events.none so it never blocks clicks, and then use something called a CSS mask to carve out the middle, leaving only a clean 2px ring of gradient around the edge. It sounds fancy, but once you see it, it clicks. Next up is my favorite detail on this whole card, that little green dot that makes it feel alive. You've seen this exact effect on LinkedIn's online indicator or a live streaming patch. It's a genuinely small trick that makes a UI feel way more polished than it has any right to. We're going to split this into 2 layers. Before gives us the solid green dot that just sits there, and after gives us the ripple that pulses outward underneath it on a loop. Let's break this down. Quick question. Why not just animate one single dot instead of splitting it into 2 layers? Try it in your head. If you scale one dot up and down, the whole badge grows and shrinks with it. It looks like it's breathing weirdly instead of pulsing. Not the vibe we want. So instead, we keep before completely still at z-index 2. That's our anchor. It never moves. Then after sits just behind it at z-index 1 and does all the animating, scaling up to 3 times its size while fading out to nothing. The still dot stays crisp on top, while the ripple does its thing underneath. Same trick, by the way, that a lot of live or online now indicators use across the web. Now let's give the job title a little personality. You've probably tried text decoration underline before and hit a wall. You can't really animate its width smoothly, and you definitely can't give it a gradient color. So we're going to build our own underline instead, using after and make it grow outward from the center like it's unzipping. Here's the little bit of geometry that makes the center out effect actually work, and once you get it, you'll reuse this trick constantly. First, left 50% pushes the left edge of our underline to the exact horizontal center of the title. But that alone isn't enough. Right now, the underline would start growing from the center to the right only, which isn't what we want. So then, transform translate x minus 50% pulls the whole element back by exactly half of its own width, recentering it perfectly. Then, when we animate width from 0% up to 100%, because the element is always staying centered thanks to that transform, it visually grows outward in both directions at once, left and right, evenly, like it's unzipping from the middle. That's the whole trick. No JavaScript needed. This next one's quick, but it's a good habit to build. Those little dots in front of part-time and senior level. A lot of people would just type a bullet character straight into the HTML or drop in a tiny icon tag for it. But that's not really content, is it? It's just visual styling. So let's inject it with before instead, and even have it light up on hover. Notice we didn't need position absolute here at all. Display inline block was enough to size it, and Flexbox's gap property handles the spacing between the dot and the text for us. Sometimes the simplest tool really is the right one. And that little job card hover selector at the end, that's the same trick from step 1. We're reaching inside the card from a hover on its parent, so the dots light up the moment you touch anywhere on the card, not just the tag itself. Step 5. Light-sheen shimmer on button. Last piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this is the one people always ask me about in the comments whenever I use it. That glossy light sweep across a button? You've seen it on premium product pages, app store banners, that kind of thing. It looks complicated. It's really not. Two things make this work, and neither of them is magic. First, overflow hidden on the button itself. This is what clips our light beam so it never spills outside the button's rounded edges. Without it, you'd see a weird rectangle poking out. Second, we literally just start our beam parked off screen to the left at left equals -75%. The skew x 20 degrees just tilts it so it reads as a light beam instead of a straight bar. And on hover, slide it all the way over to left equals 140%, past the right edge. Since the button clips anything outside its bounds, all we ever see is the beam passing through the visible area. That's the entire premium shine effect. One gradient, one transition, done. look at that, a fully interactive animated job card, and if you check the HTML, there's not a single decorative div in sight. Everything you just watched, the border, the glow, the pulse, the underline, the tag dots, the shimmer, all of it came from 6 little before and after blocks. That's it. You just built a genuinely polished production-style UI component, and your markup stayed clean the entire way through. If this pseudo element workflow clicked for you, the next smart move is to keep improving your front-end layout skills. Use my Build Any Responsive Layout guide as your next step. It will help you build layouts like a pro, faster. Link is in the description. If you want my free CSS cheat sheet, just comment cheat sheet below and I'll send it your way. If this CSS Pseudo Elements tutorial helped you understand before and after in CSS more clearly, like this video so more beginner developers can find it. Subscribe to Code with Divine for practical HTML, CSS, JavaScript, responsive web design, and front-end development tutorials. And comment below, which real-world project would you like me to build next? Keep building, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.